Okay, so this might be a short video. And the reason why, because honestly, this video kind of wraps up the second volume when it comes to Kurt Busiek and George Perez run on, well, the Avengers. And so we pick up with issues number 23. Now, with this one single issue, we kind of get into the idea of Vision going up against Wonder Man, but really more of the two characters trying their best to come to an understanding about one another. And that part right there is really important because it's all about the idea of if they are completely different from one another, but also at the same time, both men who are madly in love with the Scarlet Witch. But as we get into the opening pages of the storyline, we're really kind of getting into the idea of us seeing the Avengers just going through a workout. Now, with the Avengers around this time, it is post Heroes Reborn. And the reason why I'm bringing this up again, because when it came to Marvel, they really tried their best to make sure that all their brand new creative teams did work together when it came to all the different books. So Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, the Avengers. Now, yes, they did that in the past prior to Heroes Reborn, but I kind of feel like at this point, it was Marvel really trying their best to make sure that all the different books were connected even more than it was prior to Heroes Reborn. And that's just my own personal opinion. I could be completely wrong to somebody else, but we do see our heroes right now just going through an entire training session. But the reason why I brought up that point right there I was stating earlier is because for Steve Rogers, he now has his shield again. You see, for Steve Rogers, once he came back after Heroes Reborn, he kind of went through this whole shield thing where he had different kind of shields for a few story arcs in his own comic book, but also in Avengers as well. But in his own book, he was finally able to get his old shield back once and for all. And so we see him being able to use that shield in battle. But you also have the Avengers at the moment being able to go through a training session that was only stopped by Justice. Now, this for this character right here is really important. And the reason why, because for Justice, in our coverage over Kurt Busiek and George Perez run on the Avengers, he has been really trying his best to prove that he could be an Avenger. Now, technically, he has already proven that so many times when it came to helping the team out in different types of situations, even after being badly injured in a previous battle. But for Justice, he always kind of felt like he has something to prove. And so once you had Justice being able to be the one to finish the actual training session, it really shows that yes, he has grown a lot, but also kind of moving past the idea of believing that he has to prove something when it comes to the Avengers. But I now want to go ahead and transition over to the Scarlet Witch and Wonder Man. And here's the reason why, because you have these two characters that go out of their way to confront Vision. And here's the reason why, because in an earlier storyline, we had discovered that for the Vision, he was still madly in love with the Scarlet Witch. But by this point, he was trying his best to stay away from her. Now, in later parts of this video, we are going to explore the idea why he was doing that, but also the idea why he's so upset with the Scarlet Witch, but especially upset with Wonder Man. But for the Avengers, they also have other things going on at the moment, like the idea that right now outside their home, Avengers Mansion, you have an entire protest happening. And really, this protest is all about the idea of the Avengers not really having anybody of color on their team at this point. Now, technically, for your boy Fresh here, when I first began to read this run, I said ran this run. When I first began to read this run, I realized man, they don't have anybody on color on this roster. That's kind of wild. But at the same time, though, for the Avengers, they are a team that constantly changes. So over time, you're going to see different characters. And sometimes those characters are people of color who end up joining the Avengers. You just got to be patient. But for the public, though, it's kind of like, hey, there's no one on your team here at the moment who is somebody of color. That is pretty wild. Now, that's not it for the Avengers because you also have to remember in our last story arc that we had covered, Ultron had just wiped out an entire country. And let's not forget, Hank Pym was the one who had created Ultron. And so for the public, they're like, hey, we don't like the idea that Ultron had wiped out an entire country, but also two people that the Avengers had in their custody were able to escape. Of course, that will be the Grim Reaper and also Alchema. Now, at the same time, for the Avengers, they're also facing other issues that took place in other books, like Iron Man or Captain America. And so, for the Avengers, they're no longer that team we saw back in Avengers Day where everyone loved the Avengers. Instead, now by this point, it's the public now beginning to turn their back on the Avengers. But this kind of leads into the whole idea of Wonder Man versus the Vision. The reason why I say versus, like quotation marks, okay, see my hands here. But the reason why I'm saying it like that, because you do have Wonder Man and Wanda confront Vision. And it's kind of like, hey man, why in the world are you trying to keep yourself away from Wanda if you still love her? Now, when it came to Wonder Man, when he came back to life, he made sure that Vision would be okay with the idea of him dating the Scarlet Witch. Because for Wonder Man, he knows that the Scarlet Witch and Vision were married. They were a couple. He's kind of like, hey, listen, if you still love her and want to be with her, I will stay out of the way. Vision said no, and you had Wonder Man say, fine, cool, I'll date her. But now we all know that he still loves the Scarlet Witch. It's kind of like, hey, Vision, what is your deal? And he says, you're the problem, Wonder Man. You're the problem. And this is Kurt Busiek kind of using the lore, the history of Vision, and also Wonder Man kind of take the storyline in a different direction. And what I mean by that statement is really more of me saying, like, look at the Vision. The Vision was created by Ultron, yes, but the Vision was created by Ultron by using different parts of other Marvel characters, like, for example, Wonder Man. Wonder Man's mind was copied and put into the body of Vision. And so for Vision, he's saying, like, listen, when it came to me being who I am, I had a hard time adjusting because I was always the android that was basically a copy of you. Everything you liked, I end up liking as well. Jazz, chess, and the list goes on and on. I hated the idea of being a copy. But then here I go, I find Wanda. And when I found Wanda, for me personally, that showed that I was different, that I was not like you. I could be my own kind of person. It was organically something I liked. But then I stepped away. When I stepped away, who did she find? She found you. And here we go again. Something else that I did not technically like by my own. It was something that came from you. And so the Vision is him saying, like, I really can't be my own person because everything I like is because of you. And it sucks. And it sucks so bad. Now, mind you, for Wonder Man, he did get hit like 2 times by the Vision. But it's Wonder Man saying, shut up. Like, not like that, like, shut up, man. But more of like, shut up. Like, calmly shut up. Like, you don't realize that even though you say you're me, you don't realize I envy you. I am jealous of you. And here's the reason why. Because for Wonder Man, he always has been like this guy who's wanting to have somebody's approval. Because growing up with his father and also his brother, Grim Reaper, but especially for his father was seriously hard on both of the boys. But the idea that for Wonder Man, every single time he did something great, his father would say, hey, you could have done better, and walk away. It's never congratulations, son. And so for Wonder Man, he kind of did a few illegal things. And there was a point in time where he did supposedly die. Now, when he was supposedly dead, for the Grim Reaper, who was a good guy at first, who wanted revenge for his supposedly dead brother, it began the process of turning the Grim Reaper into an actual supervillain. And once you had Wonder Man come back to life, the only thing that happened to him was being able to join the Avengers and now becoming a hero. And so for Wonder Man, he kind of felt like he was never punished for the crimes that he had committed. Instead, he was always given things that he did not deserve. Being part of the Avengers, having a second and third chance in life. But seeing the vision was this clean slate. Somebody who's just like him, but has the ability to live a life without all the negativity that came from Wonder Man's past. And so for Wonder Man, he's telling Vision like, dude, you're a better version of me. You have the chance to be a better me. And so for the Vision, he's kind of like, whoa, that's a lot to take in. And so you have the Vision just fly away. Now, once he does, the book does kind of end on the note, leaving us wondering like, okay, will the Vision come back? We don't know. But that kind of ends volume 2 for Kurt Busiek and also George Perez run on the Avengers. And now we move on to volume 3.